I'm about to tell you the dirty, dark secret for rising up in power within a major party. Are you ready for it? Send an email to your local MP. Seriously, I know for like both Labour and Liberal, there's a lot of like hum-ha around, oh, got to play the game, dirty, dark, factional politics, conspiracy. Obviously, there is an element to which that is true for more senior positions of you've got to work within factions and make friendships that keep a broad consensus together. That is obviously true, but getting a foot in the door is actually so simple, and this method has been used by a number of people, including someone who is part of the Barton Academy who was telling us about it in the Discord, and the method is so unbelievably simple, yet from 2022 to 2025, he went from not even being a member of the Labour Party to then being pre-selected as a candidate to run in the 2025 election. And literally, if you read it right here, obviously I'm not going to give away this person's identity, but I actually emailed a local state MP in 2022 offering to volunteer, and by sheer luck they had a job opening. It started out as casual and quickly moved to a full-time electorate officer, and about a month in, I formally joined the party, had been a Labour voter before that though. So this story, I was like, okay, this seems like a pretty tangible and easy method that people can use to actually get a foot in to some sort of position of very basic responsibility within the Labour Party. So I did a quick search across the different states to find some matches as to who had a very similar story to this. There's far more than 4, but I thought I'd just pluck 4 out from a bunch of different states just to show how universal this is across the board and how it really does work in any branch of the Labour Party. But Milton Dick, current Speaker of the House, in the 1990s, he did some door knocking for the member of Rankin, and that led to he started off as a volunteer. Quite quickly, he got a job as a staffer, and then after getting that position, like an electorate officer, that's just doing the basic work that the MP doesn't want to do themselves. And so you're basically the monkey for the MP. But then after that, that gave him an opportunity to springboard into different staffer positions, different party positions, and eventually got pre-selected for Oxley in 2016. So that map quickly worked for Milton Dick, who has become a very recognisable Labour MP from Queensland. Then this one I think was really interesting. This was Ella Haddad's story. So she's from Tasmania, and she offered at 15, and literally her only job was to make the newsletter look more pretty. That was like, as a 15-year-old girl, you're not going to really task them with much more responsibility than that. Yet that was still a foot in the door. And eventually, she managed to leverage that position to become a paid advisor and a paid staffer, and then ended up in Tasmanian Parliament as well. So, again, like, it really is just a case of anything to get your foot in the door, and even a 15-year-old girl with very limited skills and experience can use the fact that she knows, hey, I know how to make this look a little bit easy to read, and manages to leverage that to become a member for Tasmanian Parliament. Then, this one I think is really interesting. So we have Tom Koustatonis, the current treasurer for South Australia. He started volunteering as a 14-year-old for the old Deputy Premier of South Australia. And again, using that route, he actually ended up becoming the treasurer. Now, obviously, that's down to talent, that's down to competence, of course. But the point still remains that his foot in the door didn't come from being this flashy candidate like a Malcolm Turnbull sort of character that they managed to reel into the party and become almost like a signing or a transfer for the party. Came through the academy, and I'm talking the Labour Academy, not the Barton Academy, but came through the academy, did his hard years working, volunteering for an MP, and then leveraged that to get other staffer positions and eventually became the Treasurer of South Australia. This one I think is really interesting because it's a Liberal one. So Mark Speakman was my local, before I moved to Marianne Stewart's electorate, Mark Speakman was my local MP at state level. I know Speaky was the Attorney General during the Bruz saga, and so obviously for a lot of Labour-aligned people, they have a very negative view of him because he was not seen as helping the cause of Friendly Geordies and all the supporters, including myself. But as a local MP, let me tell you, if it's a choice between Mark Speakman and ScoMo as your local candidate, so if ScoMo was federal, Speaky was state, let me tell you, everyone from my neck of the woods in the Shire much preferred Speaky in terms of just approachability, relatability, and just a pleasant person to be around. And so you felt you could actually make some headway by talking to him. Anyway, so he's pretty positively viewed where I'm from in the Shire. Anyway, 2011, we've got the crisis for the Labour Party, where it's off the back of, Iema gets dumped, Rees gets dumped, Christina Keneally becomes the leader. We've got the whole Eddie Obeid saga, and it's just becoming painfully obvious that New South Wales Labor has to go, and I say this as someone who literally is running an academy for people who want to be in the Labor Party. But they had to go. It just reached a terrible point. So the Liberals get this landslide in 2011, and Jackie Munro volunteers for Mark Speakman. And after 2 days of volunteering, Mark Speakman offered her a position as a paid staffer. She is now a senator, or well, technically for state level, member of the Legislative Council. She's an MLC. For the Liberal Party. She got in 2023, I think. But she got her first big break by volunteering for Mark Speakman, and that ended up becoming a paid position within 2 days. Now, obviously, the key thing for Jackie Munro, and this would be the case for this person right here, who I'm not going to reveal their identity, they're obviously competent. You're not getting offered a paid position after 2 days if you don't show some sense of competence or some sense of whereabouts. So if you want to volunteer, but you have a bit of imposter syndrome of like, I don't know, man, like what if I don't another MP to possibly take you on as a volunteer? But secondly, if you want to get up to date with Labor history and you want to connect with a network of people in the Labor Party and have a bit of perspective as to what is happening across the different Labor branches across Australia, including former candidates that have ran, join the Barton Academy, link in the description below. And that will definitely help on that front as well. But really, I think as well, just give it a go. Like these are very basic tasks, and even if it does take you a little while to find your feet, you're able to find your feet eventually. And then if you are able just to consistently be reliable for your MP and consistently take on responsibility effectively, that will translate to some sort of paid position down the track as well. And again, for budgetary reasons, or for, if there's excessive demand in one particular local electorate, you might have to wait a little bit longer. Certainly, I assume you'd have to wait a lot longer than Jackie Munro did. But there is a clear path that has been trodden before by guys like our friend in the Barton Academy, by guys like Jackie, or people like Jackie Munro. And so what I'd recommend is, if you do have political ambitions and you have some sort of capacity to volunteer, the only people that I think this wouldn't really apply for are like parents that just have you're working your second job as a parent. Pretty much for everyone else that I can think of, there would be some capacity to volunteer. I mean, if you have any political aspirations, you have to set aside some time in your weekly schedule. There we go. You have to set aside some time in your weekly schedule to be able to volunteer for the greater cause, like do things like campaigning, attending branch meetings. So an easy way in, or an easy starting point, if you don't feel as though you have a path into Parliament or into any political aspirations so far, just go to your local state MP. State MP, there'd be less demand and there's more of them, and there's more of them in a nearby transport radius. And literally just go, bang, chuck your application in the contact section. Just for someone, because I know I use a form to get all my contact with people who join the Barton Academy. Sometimes it can get missed. So you can also just click on here. You've got the email address. And so you can use that as well. You could even write a formal letter. Both of those would be fine as well. So just get in contact, and really, politicians are super busy, so don't do this long-winded thing. And this applies for me as well. Obviously, I'm nowhere near as important as a sitting member of Parliament. But for the Barton Academy, often I get essays of people like, this is why I think I should join. It's like, it's great that you're really keen. Can we get it down? Because that's a big slab of text for me to read. And I do read it, obviously. I make sure that I get the full picture when I talk to someone, but it does make it a lot easier for me if you give a 100-word application and it's just like, okay, this is easy to read, digest. I can see what your key points are, where you want to go, what you feel as though your weaknesses are. We can work with this quite easily. So be specific. Like, obviously, you can't demand your job description. You're going to get the jobs that they don't want to do as a volunteer. That you're not going to come in and get your pick of the litter. But be specific with what your strengths are, because that will then enable you to be able to move in that particular direction. And then end with a clear point of contact. This is how you can contact me. And make sure you state your availability as well, so that they have an idea. Like, worst thing for them would be like, are we getting someone who can volunteer 5 days a week? Are we getting someone who can volunteer an afternoon? Like, what are we getting here? So make sure you let them know what your availability is, and don't overextend your availability, because the worst thing you could do is to effectively overextend yourself in the application process, thinking it makes you a more desirable hire. But then when you get your foot in the door, you've just taken on more than you can handle when it comes to volunteering your time, which means you drop the ball a bit more, which means you don't get trusted with responsibility. So you only play yourself in the long run if you do end up overstretching yourself and selling what your availability is. This is just a phrase that I think is really easy to use. I'd love to volunteer sometime in your electorate office on the campaign trail. I'm happy to help with anything useful: data entry, newsletter prep, event setup, door knocking, and just general office support. And again, this just suggests that you're willing to be a team player, that it isn't all about your own personal glory, and you're willing to take on unglorified jobs for the greater cause. So this right here is a proven method that multiple politicians have used before that is an easy place to get started. Often when we hear staffer roles, we think, oh, like all scratching each other's backs. A lot of staffer positions just start from, hey, I want to help my local member. And really, if you have a different political persuasion and you are watching this, firstly, thank you for watching 10 minutes of a party you don't belong to. But just do the same thing for your party. It's a really, it's worked for the Liberals, and obviously for minor parties, there's less seats to play with and less opportunities, but the principle does still remain true. So why not, do you have any sort of political aspiration, go on, chuck an application in. If you really do want to compensate for a lack of knowledge and you feel as though you've got some big gaps in your knowledge of Labor history and how the Labor machine works, join the Barton Academy. I'll put an application in. We'd love to have you on board as well. April spots are just about sold out, by the way, so get in quick because we only have a couple left. I don't think we'll be able to keep openings beyond this week. Just also another big thing for the Barton Academy, I'm going to close it down for a little bit because I'm going to do some maintenance. I'm going to upload some new modules and redesign some things as well. So it'll still be accessible for all the people that have signed up, but I'll pause new entries in for a little while I do the maintenance and rebuild the Academy. So link in the description below and chuck an application into your local MP.
Hi there. I'm Cam and I have a YouTube channel with over 5 million views on Australian political history. And at the end of 2025, I built a program that, as we speak, is helping people get chosen to be candidates for the Labor Party. Let me tell you how. For starters, it covers the entire Labor history of the major states. Each state has like 2 books available on their Labor history, but thankfully I could get my hands on them and make easy to digest modules so that my students have the ultimate perspective of the party they're in and why certain policies worked and others just didn't. You can quiz yourself at any point to check your understanding. But the Barton Academy is much more than just a lecture hall. It's a classroom with legends across all the states that are helping people get connected and meet other people in the Labor machine. Others are giving each other feedback on their motions, and some are even helping others get beers with sitting politicians. So couple a well-connected person with someone who has actual perspective on the history of their party and the challenges that they faced, and you get this. Since 1909, our parties have been divided over one battle line. The party that thinks that unions should have a role in making decisions, and a coalition of others who think that the unions simply don't belong at the governing table. If you want to grow in influence so that you can shape that very union party, I think that I might be able to help. Click this link right here to apply to join the Barton Academy. I'll get back to you pretty quickly.